welcome everybody to this week's Insider's Edge. I'm Eric Tippetts.
I'm Jeff Jacobson.
And we're coming to you live from the beautiful Park City, Utah. Excited to be up here. Wish there was way more snow up here, but grateful that we can be here. And especially today, we have a super special guest that I think you're gonna fall in love with, start to understand much more about yourself, and really maybe why you do things that you do. And we're excited to welcome Mark Laisure.
Yeah, welcome, Mark. Just to give everybody a little bit of background on Mark. As I said, we go back for a long time, Mark and Eric and I, and it's funny, we're really speaking before this call, talking about how years ago when we all met each other, we really gravitated towards each other. There was a lot of static, a lot of noise, but at the end of the day, the three guys always standing around talking to each other were Eric and Mark and I, and our conversations were at a different level. And it was something that I think bonded all of us from a long time ago. But to set more of a framework for Mark's career, he's done it all. Without going into details, he's been part of billion-dollar companies from startup to valuation to IPO. He's had some amazing successes in his life, and also some things that people would call failure. Been at the very top of the mountain and also down at the bottom, trying to claw his way back up. He's a tech entrepreneur, a futurist, and the last thing I actually like the most, Mark, and I'm looking forward to you speaking on that, change management coach. I'd never heard that or seen that, but when I read it, I thought to myself, that's perfect. It's exactly what Mark is. And so we're thrilled to have you, Mark. We're thrilled to be reconnecting. And I'm just very grateful to you for coming on, and you're going to have an amazing impact on the people that are here. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for not only the enduring friendship as you shared, but for inviting me on and giving me the opportunity to share with your peers.
Excellent. So I think, maybe to get it started, we're all entrepreneurs. I mean, everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, we've got a lot of our community is, in the hunt, in the battlefield of entrepreneurship, and trying to understand, what things can give them a breakthrough in their career, in their relationships, in their finances, all these things that we strive for every day. But one thing that we like to talk about on this call, an insider's edge, getting into what creates success and why do some people just magically attract, this wealth and abundance constantly while other people struggle with it. And we talk a lot about it starts as a child. It starts as you start to create those belief systems, and there was a window that was painted for you that either served you or it didn't. And a lot of people, Jeff and I have had many conversations of, my childhood versus his, and why do I do things just naturally, and why does he do things naturally, and decisions we have. Talk a little bit about, we've talked about where you've been, good and bad as an entrepreneur, as a person. Talk to us about where it started. Like, where did you were born and raised, and kind of the belief systems you were built with.
Wow. Well, I now have the opportunity of kind of looking at everything from a relevant viewpoint. My life was a series of radical twists and turns or changes. And now it makes a lot of sense. It afforded me an opportunity to experience a lot of different experiences, to learn different cultures, whether they be, as a child, what's a different culture? Well, different cultures. I was a choir boy, I was a band geek, I was a team football captain. There's all these subcultures that I became part of, and they were very impactful in terms of my worldview, in terms of my mindset, in terms of levels of confidence that I did or didn't have. And then I think as time went on, and as I really started to explore the essence of who I was, which came more from the uncomfortable challenges and the losses, I think that's when you really start to look at things again, right? The successes seem like, oh, this is great and life's great and I've had success. The reality is, I look back and I don't even feel like some of those business successes were successes. I feel like I was getting rewarded, and yet I can see now that maybe I was striking out at life. I was a good guy, but yet there were so many things that I now look at differently or would do differently. But as a child, I grew up in the Midwest, just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Very humble beginnings. And my dad worked at NASA, and I was always looking up at the sky. I was always wanting to understand what's really going on. What are we here for? What really is happening. So I was always kind of on a path of exploration and searching. But yeah, I had an early career as a singer, traveled all over the world as a singer, trained as a classical vocalist for the Ohio Boy Choir, and sang for a couple of presidents. And yet I would come home and get beat up on the playground because I was a choir boy, right? And so there's this weird dichotomy of experience there. Moved from Cleveland to Florida at a young age, and then shifted totally different cultures, from a big multi-thousand blue collar school to a private school in Florida, and a very different culture set. A lot of these kids' parents were in a different stage of life, and they were kind of retired, and things were just looked at a different way. And so I ended up going into sports. That took me into college. There was just all these twists and turns. And now looking back, I think one of the first things that I started to learn through some of the ebbs and flows of my professional life was to expect the unexpected. Because you might think, in fact, I call it the right left turn. You think you're going one way, and then life happens and you end up going down a totally different path, which might seem like a disaster. It might seem like the worst thing that ever happened. And yet, once you get through that, you may look back saying, wow, I didn't realize how perfect that event was, or how off path I really was before that happened.
We were talking earlier about, you know, everyone always looks for a way out. There's always a new thing to blame. Where, the pandemic, like, here it is. Wait, it's the president. Oh, wait, there it is. Like, when you talk about a right left turn, I mean, you're constantly having these. I mean, I think what's really important for people to hear and to recognize is that it's never going to be perfect. It's never that straight line. And so when you look at other people and say, man, they have everything, why is it so hard for me? You're not recognizing that life is happening for you. There's turns that are happening that you needed to take, but it's until you take them and go through them that you actually get to where you can look back. It's fun to have you say, I look back now and go, it was a blessing, it was a good thing, but at the time was probably a dark thing.
I think the shift comes when maybe taking what you said even one step further, and when you have the ability to make a choice to look at everything and say, you know what, it is perfect. It is perfect as it is. That's a choice. And even though it may not feel like it may not be all the things you dreamed of, it may not have the circumstances, that you've envisioned. But once you take control of your ability to choose an acceptance in the current moment, I think that's one of the first steps, at least that started to empower me. The other thing that came up while you were talking, Eric, is uh, I think there's a fundamental shift. This idea of victimhood is how we were brought up, right? We're brought up separate. We're brought up with the idea that you're out there in Zoom land and I'm over here, and we have the illusion of separation. Yet one of the most powerful things I was taught, or I started to experience, and I think all wisdom keepers and all indigenous wisdom, and a lot of the new knowledge and the quantum physics and that is starting to say the same thing. We are cameras. The human being is more like a camera in its formative years. So it's first, 7, 8 years. Think of yourself like a camera. You're absorbing, you're taking in lines of code, you're building your worldview based on Yeah, it might be lifetimes that you brought into this lifetime, but for those that don't subscribe to that, just the idea of every experience that you've had from birth to that moment, those become, right, part of what you believe the world to be. And everybody's is completely different. One could be like Windows and the other one's like running Mac. They're completely different programs, but they're completely relevant to that individual. Now, the flip side is at 8, 9, whatever that age is, you become a projector. Now that you have that worldview, that whole shift of identity as you start moving into, adolescence and start developing your identity, you're now a projector. And what we're starting to understand scientifically, and we'll call it a theory at this point, but looking at it from your own ability to take control of your own life, you're projecting out to the world that which you believe, those vibrations that which you believe. It's not a coincidence when you're angry that angry people show up, or that you like, more aggressive music, or when you're in love, everything's fluffy and everything's happy and you listen to Air Supply, or whatever the case may be. Maybe not nowadays, but you get the point. It's all frequency, and that frequency gets set over time through repetition, through your own beliefs. So when people think you're starting here, what's actually happening is you're starting here. And then this has the opportunity to change the direction. So the brain has the hand on the rudder when the heart is actually the sails.
Wow.
That's Mark, that is
Wow. It's the frequency.
frequency.
I mean, to think about, we've got a channel. I mean, I don't think people even recognize what channel they are today. They're just wondering why they're hearing negative, and they're hearing, and I mean, attracts like. Like the way you are being is, things are showing up. Yet that's so powerful. Like, what frequency? That'd be a great question. Like, what frequency are you on today? And
Absolutely. Most people think they're living their own life or following their gut, and most times they're living their mom's life or their dad's life or their wife's life or their children's life or whatever the case may be. Some influencer, they're living somebody, or the party's life. In this political environment, whose life are you truly living? And you go back to the ancients, and they say, "Know thyself." It's not know everybody else's selves.
I think that's been the biggest struggle I've had, kind of wondering why the world, is so mad. But you start to look at social media, and you start to look at the media, and you start to look at these conversations that are being put into our head and becoming conversations that we shouldn't even, like, why are we even having them? And this social media is a massive, where I think people are comparing themselves. It's this comparison constantly. Like, look at this entrepreneur has success, man, amazing. Like, I want that. When the lights go off and the cameras and the social media goes off, and you start to go, they really aren't like that. Like, I can't remember, so many times I would go speak at events, and these speakers would go speak, then I'd see them in the backstage, and I'd go, this is exactly opposite of who they were just out there speaking. And is that what you find? A lot of the people, especially, I mean, we've spoken at events together, and you going and speaking with life changes, tapping into a lot of these influencers. Is that what
There's
you're saying?
very few people that show up that actually are their message. And I would say that the most authentic that I've come across are the ones that say, "I'm not my message." So they're actually, they're actually self-aware of the fact that they're doing work. They're still trying to improve. They're still, fearful of this or overcoming that. And yet there's something they know or have been taught that they're trying to convey, right? We teach what we need to learn most, right? So I think that's social media is the ultimate projection.
So let me ask you this, as an entrepreneur, and let's say that I'm trying to connect with more people. I'm trying to attract people into my business, or I'm trying to get a result. And I'm an introvert. I'm not this extrovert project, like, out there going, and I've got my frequency. How can somebody change their frequency? Like, how does somebody tap into more people or tap into another person's channel?
How do they raise their frequency?
You know what? I'll use my greatest guide as an example, which is my son. I like to tell people that my son came to save my life because he was born right at the top of my second wave, and I'm not so sure I would have made it. It was pretty dark. I had already been through one, illusion of unlimited wealth, retirement. I had put 6 years and we raised millions of dollars into this public vehicle, and the housing bubble collapsed and it collapsed and I collapsed right along with it because I thought I had started to find my purpose. And oddly enough, I was right. I did find my purpose, and it's why I'm on this call today, except I wasn't aligned with my own purpose yet. But going back to the answer, uh, he would do things without even knowing it that would raise the vibration, or where I could tell he was trying to lift me up, or sometimes keep me, in a better place. But it's not rocket science, and it comes down to almost the most basic elements. You strip out the story and the business and the things that you think you have to do, and you go back to, how do I feel? And if I feel afraid, if I feel insecure, if I feel angry, that is the frequency, that's the vibration that you're going to put out. And you're going to attract more events, people, or results that mirror that frequency. So he used to, we had this little trampoline in the room, and he would come in and he would, if I was having that down moment, like a clock, he would come in and start bouncing around in this trampoline. Now, it looked like he was having fun, but he was dancing in front of this and bouncing and making funny faces, and I couldn't help but start to laugh. And he would click me into joy. He would shift me out of thinking those thoughts, which have their own frequency, thoughts are things, and he would enable me to start resonating at a different frequency. And then suddenly I would find myself maybe up on the trampoline with him, or we would go outside, or right, it just changed the game. And so I think, coming back to your own choices, change your game. If you realize you're doing the same thing, if you pick up the coffee cup with the right hand every time, pick it up with the left. If you think you have to do these things and open the laptop and be in stress because you're working, change the game. Close the laptop, go outside, roll around, do somersaults in the grass. Find a way to change your own frequency, and it comes back to back to basics, right? You start over in terms of shifting your mindset.
You think about, so many people are blaming, or they're looking at that other person, is rejecting me. Like, one thing we talk a lot about is, rejection, the fear of rejection. Like, I don't want to talk to them, or I don't want to ask them for a sell because they might reject me. And every one of those questions is about somebody else versus yourself. What frequency are you on? Maybe that's the major disconnect, that they don't feel you. You're talking in two different vibrations.
Absolutely. There's resonance, right? When you've heard the term resonance, and people know that when a singer sings at a certain frequency, the glass shatters. That's what we're doing all day long, right? Your cells and the water in your being and your mind and your heart are creating a vibrational norm that is your frequency. And if you're vibrating at one level and somebody else is vibrating, I'll tell you what, let's use an easier explanation. Everybody's been into an elevator, and somebody walks in and you get that feeling, and it's either a really good feeling and suddenly you're talking to them and you become best friends, or it's that, ooh, we slide all the way over as far as possible, nobody says a word. It's a different vibe. Call it a vibe, call it a frequency, whatever the word is there. That's because we are vibration. Well, the other thing is, I'll go into the next step, which is, again, we've been brought up to think that everything originates here. No, it originates here. It's in the heart. The heart is actually people think it pumps blood. What it actually does is spins the blood. The heart spins the blood with 7 layers of muscle into a vortex, which creates a sound, and that sound then maps to your DNA. So you're a certain frequency by the experiences you have, and if you're always in that fear or anger, you're vibrating a certain song. If you're in joy and happiness and open-heartedness, you're in a different frequency, right? And so that's where you get that difference in resonance. And it's that basic. I would say before you look at the entrepreneurial pursuit, I think that's where you got to actually get in the game in terms of looking at yourself and how you can change your own situation.
This is so powerful because we can sit here and talk about, the three ways to get a sell. How to hard close anyone. These things where people are so focused on these tips, tricks, techniques, tools, whatever it might be, not realizing if you're an entrepreneur, a husband or a wife or a friend, whatever it might be, you got to start with yourself first, of those conversations that you're having with yourself. Because if you're walking into a room, people feel your energy. So even though I can't tell you how many times, and I'm absolutely guilty of it. You walk in and say, I got to show everybody I'm great. When inside, I'm hurting. Something just happened, and I don't feel great. And it's amazing how people sense that. They pick up on it. And even
People
I
sense
got a
it.
big
They
smile on
absolutely
people.
know it.
And I think it's
Yeah.
important, and tell me if you believe this, that it isn't just in person. I think people don't recognize how powerful it is on phone calls. So people will be mad, pissed, and like, I need to make a sell, and then make a phone call. They're acting like, magically your voice is just going to sound amazing. I think energy, it flows through everything, through this camera.
This is where I was saying the illusion of separation. Absolutely. That's the idea that we're separate is an illusion. The heart is, in my opinion, that's the all-seeing eye. That's what knows what's going on. That's what intuition is. That's what the connection to source is. Whatever the words you want to use, it knows all, which means it can feel your truth. So you can say one thing, you can project a happiness, you can project a confidence, and yet if your heart is saying something different, they know it. And therefore, and which also then comes into sales and authenticity. Are you aligned with your product? Do you really believe in it? Or are you selling something because you got to make a living, or because somebody told you to sell it and you don't really believe in it? And that's the difference between walking in for a sales call, and somebody could sell ice to igloos because they believe in that ice more than anything ever in the world, or the opposite, where they walk in and you can tell that they don't give a damn about this product, and you feel something.
It's in their soul.
It's in their soul. I think you said it's such an important thing, Mark, about so many of us think that everything comes from here. I'm going to use my brain to figure out what I want to do and how I'm going to make money. And I need to come up with this idea through my brain. And that's what you think about, when in reality, you're neglecting your opportunity to connect with your heart. And ultimately, if you have the ability to lead with your heart, all of the things that we worry about, that we think we need our head to do, fall into place. And that isn't by coincidence. It's because that's the way it's set up. That's the way it works, and especially the way we communicate with people. We're talking about, selling, and I need this script. I need to memorize this script and say the script right. And if I don't say the script right, I'm not going to get the sell. But we're missing the point when we're focusing on that. And if we have the ability to get out of our heads and into our hearts, communication becomes easier, connection becomes easier. All the obstacles that we put up by thinking we need to use our head fall away when we're truly able to connect with our heart and connect our heart with everybody else's heart.
100%. And this is a new way of living. Not a new way, but it's a new way in modern society, because we've been taught, brain first, thinking first, survival of the fittest, kill or be killed, all these things which are separate from listening to your heart. Before, it's like, don't bring heart into business. And what people aren't realizing, the minute you walk into the room, heart is in the business, because it's your heart that is on display, and it's your authenticity. I'll tell you a quick story that you reminded me of, business-wise, that was really defining in my early career, because I started Series 7, and then I ultimately had many licenses on Wall Street. But I built a portfolio very quickly, and yet not for the reasons you would think, because I didn't know stock from livestock growing up. And I thought I was going to go into the FBI with my psychology degree. And then they put a hiring freeze out and they said, go get professional experience. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And because I was more interested in what makes people tick. But I thought, I didn't grow up with this influence, so maybe I'll learn the world of finance. And once I got into that world, then I realized, oh, wow, it's really glorified sales. And I was taught how to use scripts and taught how to overcome objections and taught all the, the Brian Tracy safety, the sales tools or whatever the case may be. And yet the day that my career shifted was when I had an insight that one of my investors gave me. And because I called him, the market was totally taking a dump. He was losing massive amounts in his portfolio. And I called him because I care. And I told him the truth. I'm like, you're having a horrible day and I don't know what to do about it. And this really sucks. And it was silence. And I was like, oh, I'm waiting for this.
Yeah.
And
You
and
there?
he's and he came back, he says, I'm transferring my whole portfolio to you. And I said, really? He
Wow.
said, yeah, because every other broker I have is under the table waiting for good news to sell me more crap that I don't need in my portfolio. And that actually ended up happening multiple times. And I didn't do it as a gimmick. I did it because I cared, but he connected. And I think he felt that. And that was ended up how I built my career, was because I actually showed up authentically and did the best I could. And some days were great. And I could tell you stories where, we were up 25, 30 points a day with Think to Me at one point. And then there's other days where obviously the bottom was falling out and it hurt and I hated picking up the phone. But that ultimately, also, some of my closest friends were my first investors, still, regardless of what we've been through.
So
Absolutely.
I think that's important, maybe kind of to transition into, everybody thinks in some way, I deserve, like I should have this, why I'm working so hard and I should get these results and I should have this, or I didn't have the silver spoon in my mouth and they did, they started higher than me. I think it transitioned to help people understand, you've been from the bottom to, what were you saying, like the janitor, I've done the janitor,
Janitor to CEO.
and then I've done the CEO that
Chairman
everyone,
and CEO, all the way down to, washing bottles.
maybe talk a little bit about your journey, and so people understand the breadth, that what you are, the experience you are sharing isn't, I read this in a book, which most people, you get these book smart people and you meet them and start to get into life and they don't ever talk about heart. Like they talk about more books, like, I read more books than you. So maybe talk more about that, because I want people to understand the wisdom and the experience that you're giving. This is coming from the street, from real events.
I'll start. Thank you, Eric. I love this conversation, by the way, I'm grateful to be here. I think the world really needs this, and I think we're all going through some sort of change. And so that's what came through when you were talking. The first thing, before I go through a snippet of my career, it now is abundantly clear. I'll use that word, abundantly
Ooh,
clear, that it all stems from within. Self-worth, self-love, these aren't cliches. This is the absolute truth. I look back to my first winnings. And so from the career perspective, I had a rocket launch career as a broker. I then was managing big money. I was working with a New York member firm as a principal with both the NASDAQ and a New York member firm. And I started then, for them, I basically built an ad hoc venture arm with them and started putting money with companies to help these enterprises get going. And I had a good intuition for, I've always been able to see tomorrow's news today. It seems like I've always had a good sense on the trends and where things were heading. And so we were able to do very well investment wise with that. But the portfolio and the wealth and everything, that was great. But what happened on the upside, and the short of my career is I've been fortunate enough to be on the right and the wrong side of both major market crashes, the dot-com era and then the housing bubble. And you can now add global pandemic to the resume, right? So there's a lot of change. There's a lot of wonderful stories. There's amazing life experiences, and there's some really dark times. And I think it affords me the opportunity to sit with someone authentically. And I've been there. I've wrestled with the demons. I've overcome addictions. I've done, a lot of things that you do when you're making those choices where you're going to go one direction or another. You're going up or down. And the only person with the power to make that decision is you. And I think that's where it all stems from. But what I didn't realize when I was having the winnings, and the winnings happened a little too fast and a little too easy, is I didn't value myself enough to retain that. And
Ooh.
I didn't know that. So here was the problem. I didn't care about losing stuff because I didn't have stuff before I got the stuff. But what happened was I started losing friends. I started losing experiences. The doors that just flung open and the VIPs, this and that, all of a sudden weren't as accessible. Didn't care as much. Didn't want to hear. So the identity that I had allowed myself to become based on perception of what I had, this illusion of unlimited wealth, losing that was where my pain came from, because I had to start finding my way to true value, which is underneath any of those stories. And that was a tough journey. You really got to start looking at yourself honestly to say, who am I? And I'm not those things, and those things don't really matter. But yet you're still, it takes a while because you think they matter, because that's where your power came from, but it's inauthentic power.
I mean, especially everybody's chasing everybody. I'll call it, you know, finances. I mean, money. I think everybody is seeking this, like, money's going to buy me happiness. Like, once I hit this, like, if I just make this, like $1 million, that we were talking this morning about, how much does this mean? And does it, so now that you have that, is tomorrow a different day? Do we go and make magically a face, a new
Right.
face turns on? It's something where we try to help people understand your beliefs levels. Your beliefs is where you will never outgrow those, like your standards. Like, if you don't feel worthy, you can maybe hit something, but it sounds like your belief was not here and you hit here. So somehow you almost self-sabotage yourself, like to go back to where,
Back to frequency.
I'm worthy. Or
Right?
your
It's back to frequency, right? If you're vibrating down here with I'm not enough, with I don't deserve good things, with I don't deserve a happy life, or whatever else the story is that's going on under the surface, then you sure as hell aren't going to retain whatever it is that you think you've worked so hard for, because you're not into a vibrational alignment with that abundance. And I've been there. I've been in, alignment with it, and I've been out of alignment, and I've looked at what were my next choices, and did I repeat a pattern, or did I overcome and go to the next level?
Did you find, was it a self-sabotage, or do you find that, the laws of life kind of, I'll call it, they always clean up the mess. Like, you can lie to yourself and act like you're, fake it till you make it. Everybody would, but it. It's
Both.
internal.
I would say it's both. For starters, self-sabotage it's also self-success. So if you are honest with yourself, then that belief. So the fake it till you make it. I think I do believe in affirmations. I do believe in visioning yourself in the wellness space, but you have to believe it. If you don't believe it, if you don't believe you're worthy, then that faking, you're not faking nobody.
Yeah, you're faking this person.
You can't fool the universe.
It's this one. Here's who I'm faking.
Right, exactly. And so that to that standpoint, it will be self-sabotage, because the truth is going to find you again. And that's when you're going to say, how did I get here again? Right? You start looking at the patterns that you repeat.
So we have a friend that Laura.
Yeah.
Todd Topper. So Tiff's sister. And, after like the 7th boyfriend, where she came to us and blamed, like, they're always the same. We suddenly said, this
What's the
happens like
common
every
thread?
time. Have you
Yeah.
ever stopped for a minute and said, maybe it's not me, but maybe I should actually look at myself. I think that's the hardest thing, is for people to actually stop and be authentic with themselves, of the truth of who they are.
Yeah, we teach a class called recalibration, and it's really about that. You get past the self-help stuff, you got to be aligned with yourself first. You got to be aligned with your truth. And when's the best time to look at things, or to understand things? It's when you look backwards. When you look over your shoulder and say, "Wow, my life was amazing every time I lived near the water." Except you're on a fifth floor walk up in the middle of town, and now, maybe you start to reevaluate. Maybe I should move by the water, or whatever those situations are. You start to say, "Yeah, every boyfriend has this. Every girlfriend has this." And I had those types of situations. And then you go a step deeper and you say, how does that correlate to mom, to dad, to the nanny, to whoever, uncle, Jim that raised me? What were those? How does that correlate? Because that's how you'll see the patterns. And once you give yourself the permission to look at the truth of the things that continue to happen, now you can change it, because now you're in control, as opposed to being a victim of whichever story that is.
Mark, that's so important. We talk about stories. You grow up, and we joke about it. Your parents, your uncle, your aunt, whoever it is that was so impactful on you as a child, essentially writes your story and then gives you the book. Said, there you go. There's your story. Open it up, chapter 1, and
Yep.
that's it. And it's your story. And so many people, myself included, for so many years, never read another book. I only read that book that somebody handed me. And it wasn't until the power to change is within you. And that sounds so cliche to say that, but there's power in there, and there's also fear in there. And the realization that we each inside of us have everything that we need to be anything that we want to be. That's the truth. But the realization of that is difficult, because when you realize that, then you look back and think, damn it, all that stuff that I was blaming on somebody else was actually me. I caused that. But at that same time, then all of a sudden you get that realization of, well, if that's the case, then I can change what's going forward. If I was the cause of what happened, then I also can turn around and have the power to change what's going forward, and to change that book, and to start to rewrite the book of my life according to me, not according to anybody else. And for
Absolutely.
so long, so many people stay inside of that loop. They stay inside of that loop. And what we'd love to do, and you're doing it, and we're hoping that we can do it, is to let people realize that you have that power. You don't need to look under a rock. You don't need to drink a bottle of vodka to find it. You don't need to womanize or gamble, whatever we do to mask the fact that we're trying to find something. But if we could just hold up a mirror and look at it, or hold up a mirror in front of our heart, there's the answer.
100%. And everybody on this call, or anybody that's going to view the video, has their own book. And their own book reads their own way, which means their truth it's just as relevant as your truth. And that every of those distractions that you just rattled off are just an opportunity to distract yourself from looking at that truth and changing that story. And you have, as hard as it may be, sometimes you do have the power, even in the darkest hour, to change the story. It takes practice. It's just like working out. If you have done something a certain way for so long that it becomes habit, guess what? You got to do something different a certain way for so long until it becomes habit. And it takes time. You don't just suddenly turn on the fluffy music when you're angry.
Yeah.
You got to get yourself in alignment with that vibration. And so it's just like working out. You can't get off if you're sitting on the couch all day and you can't move, you don't go straight to vegan and I'm doing this and that. No, you take one step, you get up, you walk around the block, whatever those steps of easing yourself into a new way of being. Give yourself little wins.
Hey, give yourself little wins.
Yeah.
That's right. A daily win.
A daily win.
So Mark, tell me what motivates you? Like what gets you? I mean, Jeff was asking, like, how do you get beat down so many times and get back up and stay as focused? And when we have these conversations, you're changing the world, and there's so many people can learn from you in that experience, but so many people get knocked down and they Les Brown says, you knock me down, but if I'm face up, I get up. Like, I'll always get back up. I think, understanding that, whether we talk about entrepreneurship, your financial, your business success, your relationship success, spiritual, all these things, when you get a failure, you get beat down, or people just seem to, not be on the same frequency. What motivates you? How do you stay motivated? How do you keep going each day and keep showing up?
Wow, it's a great question. And as I've alluded to, and I'll say it again, I've lived in those shadows. I've lived the darkness. I've not wanted to be on the planet. I've gone through every, version of that dance. And I think the thing that motivated me out of it is people. I, I I look at the world differently than a lot of folks. I see all of the businesses and all of the, I see that as storytelling. And I think we are here to relate. I feel at some level, I realize that we came down so that the soul in me could connect with the soul in you. And we may be completely different, have different stories. We may resonate, we may not. Friends come, friends go. But at the end of the day, we're here to experience. So the opportunity to experience life on earth, that motivates me. And then I have the opportunity to say, okay, I have a choice to make a different experience. I have a choice to make a better experience. And I'm looking at Israel. I don't know if it's Izzy
Izzy.
smile, and that those moments where I'm out walking around and you see that smile and you see somebody engage, and or you have a chance of taking them out of the frown and turning them into the smile. That to me, that's living. Everything else has just been a tool for, experiencing contrast.
So we are, we've had multiple discussions about, motivation, and we talk a lot about, it's easy to give up on yourself, and it's easy to say, I don't need to work out today, and I'm the only one that will know it. And so, I'm willing to skip it today, not realizing that those little trust deposits or broken promises are so much more valuable to you, to know that you kept your promise. So not saying I'm going to do, I've never done a push-up and today I'm going to do 100. And then you do 5 and you go, man, I did. It's got to, you just said something so powerful. Give yourself little wins. Give yourself daily wins. Like you won today. What did you did one push up. You did one thing and actually did it. And then tomorrow to tell yourself, but show up and just do it. And when you talk about it, that change happens over time. I think it's those those promises that you kept, and you believe in yourself.
Yeah, that, and thank you for echoing it. And then what I would do right on top of that little win is give someone else a little win.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that's where the magic is. If you shift into the victimhood is what happened to me, and believe me, I played a great victim for a long time at various points, and I have the stories to say it's theoretically impossible for the impossible would have to happen for. So I had all sorts of reasons to make excuses, and it wasn't until I dropped those excuses and said, at some level, I wrote this story. At some level, I am creating my life. I have that power, or I have the ability. And I realized that actually after my son came, when I realized just now in this moment, I have the opportunity to write a new story. I can make a choice and do something totally different right now. So that must mean that everything that happened up till now is perfect. Because if I have this opportunity right now, then whatever I thought was bad got me here. It has to be perfect. So when you can shift that mindset, but then taking it the rest of the way to giving someone else little wins, that actually was how I started helping myself out of the dark. I would make sure that I opened doors for people. I would make sure that if somebody wasn't, I used to think about a whole T-shirt collection I wanted to print when I would go running on the cliffs in Hollywood, because people wouldn't talk back, or they wouldn't respond, or you couldn't engage. And I'm like, what? You're allowed to say hello. You're allowed. This is way pre-pandemic, where now we got another or many more excuses as to why we can't talk to each other. Connect, and when you connect and you just tell a joke and you compliment someone, and the smile comes on, and suddenly that person that may not be feeling worthy feels seen, feels embraced. Just that moment can change everything.
Oh man. Dude, I'll tell you, I just did a podcast with a girl that is this spiritual healer, Reiki, chakra. I met her in Puerto Rico. I was speaking at an event there, and she touched base, and I go, wow, thank you for, remember me. And she goes, I just want to tell you, you made such an impact on me, and you probably didn't realize it, but you saw me. And we're on a Zoom, and I said, I go, of course. I go, I mean, you're a human, you're doing amazing things. And she goes, no. She goes, you really saw me. As we were talking, there's times where you talk to somebody and you can almost see they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're thinking about their day, or they're thinking about what they think you're going to say. They're already wanting to finish your words, and and I already got the answer. Like just shut up for a minute.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
I'm already there. But it was, I didn't even realize that it wasn't something I was trying to do. I was just present in conversations. When you have a conversation with somebody, if they are there and you're giving them your time, which is your most valuable asset, be there.
What you just said is the grand slam. You weren't doing it for any other reason. It wasn't contrived. You were present. You were authentic. You were just being you. Now we go back to that, know thyself. Your heart was on display. And this is back to what Jeff said at the outset of the call, which is, again, congratulations for what you guys are doing. And thank you so much for bringing me into the conversation, because this is where we connected at the beginning. We could have been on the middle of the dance floor, or somebody else was having an argument, and here comes Tippetts. It's all about the love. It's all about the love. And then Jeff would come dancing by. And that was life. And that is life. And that truth, it wasn't contrived. You were never trying to get your agenda across. It was all about the love. And I think when you show up that way for other people, you think about it energetically, back to frequency. If it's all about what can I get, what did someone do to me, what did I lose, that energy is in here. If it's all about I see you, I'm listening, I feel you, I hear you, I'm actually interested, that energy is going out. And when you push that out, it expands however many fold, and it comes back to you.
Oh man,
it's beautiful.
I've never had anyone say that. It's the wins. Like, recognize your wins, whether big, small. You had a win today, but I love then go give somebody else a win. That is, I mean,
if everybody else was living from that space, and we talk be in service and this thing, but we kind of lose that basic connection of paying it forward from a win perspective. And you may be helping somebody that has had 0 wins and hasn't been in the mindset to give themselves any wins. And so suddenly you tip the scales and flip them, and now they're like, oh wow. And then suddenly they pay it forward, or they give somebody else a win. You never know the ripples that you create.
Well, I think most people don't know how to. They think, oh, I like go give somebody else a win. Is that giving money?
That's it. It could be anything.
I got to go donate. Not realizing what you said is, I opened the door and smiled.
I smiled.
I mean, just a smile, getting somebody to smile, it has an impact that you don't realize that you might have passed. And you smile, or you say hi, and they pattern break. They're like, hi, and smile, and you keep walking. They are walking away with that energy. It's like a contagion, like happiness and smiles. And we joke anytime we go out to a restaurant or somewhere where there's people, we always look for the people that are smiling. Like you look and go, I'm going to go over there and hug those people. I want to smile with them. And Mark can, attest, and Jeff, I love hugging. So people are like, man, get off me. Like, why are you always, I'm like, I'm going to show you. But that fulfills me. It makes me happy when I see other people happy and they're smiling and they're going in a, I want to lead people in a positive way. And I love this conversation. I think this is one of hundreds that we want to have with you, because I feel like this is 1%. There's so much that you have gone through and you've experienced, and you can help people with the change management. I mean, we are in the biggest change of life going on right now. And how do we steer it? Nobody wrote the book for the pandemic. Nobody wrote the book on, how to get through these things or these challenges that everybody has their own every day. Now, I truly believe if everybody went and threw their bag of problems in the middle, we'd go grab our own bag and take it and be like, man,
I don't want that one.
These people are messed up. So own them. I love it when you're like, own them. Like, yes, I've got issues. I'm not perfect. I'm struggling, and I'm not this perfect person. And I think that vulnerability and that authenticity, starting with yourself, starts to build within you, and with those promises that you keep to yourself. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're in this one-man show, and everybody's looking out there when they should be, I am the one man. Like, I don't need it. There is no audience. It
starts here.
So start having this conversation with me.
Yeah, when you look at the world as a mirror, and that's, we didn't get into that on this call, and maybe mirrors is a place we start on the next conversation, because when you look at the world, and I say the world, meaning everything, when you look at everything that shows up in your environment as a mirror, it's shocking how it changes your perspective, because when it's a mirror as opposed to victimhood, you're starting like, wow, how did that person show up? Or you start listening to people saying things as they walk by. You start to listen to the music that's in the background after a conversation. You start recognizing things, and then gamify it, because now you start changing your own vibration, and then you watch the world as a mirror, and you're like, oh, things are a little different. That worked. Oh, wow. And or you repeat a pattern, and all of a sudden, the stuff hits the fan again. You're like, wow, I did. And you start to put yourself in control of the game, as opposed to, again, especially in this environment now, everybody's got a billion reasons why they want to blame something else, somebody else, the government, the this, that. Man, turn the TV off, look at your family, embrace your environment, breathe and feel your breath. And that's how these rocks, stacked up behind me, because I left the noise to try to find peace, and I found myself piling up these rocks, and it was by accident, but it was just a way for me to get out of the thought process that was in my head, and to get out of the dialogue of who's blaming who, and start getting back in control of my vibration.
Isn't it funny?
Love it.
And we're all guilty of this. Is that if you think about the life that everybody was complaining about, suddenly this change has happened, and how many people are like, I just want it back normal.
I want to go back to that.
I want to go back to that. It's like, wait a second. Wasn't that what you were just complaining about?
You hated it.
You hated that. You said, man, life sucks and this, that. Now you're going, hey, actually, that was pretty darn good. Like, let's go back.
Why? Change is different. Change is uncomfortable because it's a different frequency, right? When you eat a certain thing all the time, then suddenly, it's ketchup, mustard. All of a sudden, it's different. It tastes different. It doesn't, and that's the way, people don't change. You don't move from a comfy couch until you're uncomfortable. There's always that thing. You get to a point, you're like, wow, I've been here 3 hours, but my shoulder's starting to hurt. My right leg fell asleep.
What is it?
Then you move. It doesn't matter how comfy the couch is. You are now uncomfortable. And that's the thing with change. And some people have and I got a pretty stubborn head. So I beat my head against the wall, because, part of my, what I was rewarded for was my tenacity, my ability to persevere. So I kept doing the same thing for a long time, maybe longer than I should have, or longer than others would have.
I love that, Mark, and we're getting close to an hour, which we definitely have a lot we want to talk about on our next call, especially the change management coach concept. You know, like you said, one thing that is a constant in everybody's life is change, and we fear it. It's uncomfortable. You change your vibration, and there's no growth without change. Like you said, you're not going to get in shape staying on the couch. And you're not going to get better as a human being unless you put yourself into an uncomfortable position, into a frequency or a vibration that you haven't been in. And so I don't think we have the time today, but it'd be really fun maybe to set it up for our next call, is talk about change and talk about how people go through change. You know, what are ways to get through it? How do you look at change, steps to get through it, you know, as opposed to somebody just thinking, I can't do it. I'm right here. I want to get right here. And this gap is just, I can't climb that mountain. There's no way I can do it. And it's the way that you look at it. And next time, I'd really love to get into your mind on, you know, what is change management? How do you manage change? And I think that would be something that'd be really beneficial for me selfishly, personally, but also for our community. I think that it would be a wonderful thing to get into.
I would love to, happy to, and it's the one thing that I've learned, especially in my career, which is it's the only constant. You know, we say life changes, and that's the truth. Whether it's in your business, whether it's in your home life, you know, business especially, you make all these plans. It doesn't matter what kind of plans you make. Something comes along, unexpected, right? Expect the unexpected, and all of a sudden you're in change. So you know, being able to, how do you deal with that? How do you respond? How do you improvise? You know, that's part of what we can talk about next time for sure.
Awesome.
Mark, we appreciate you. We appreciate your friendship, just your guidance, you know, just the connection that we have. Super appreciate that. How can people, if people want to, which we recommend everyone, you know, go connect with Mark, go, you know,
see what he's doing.
Go share your appreciation with him. How do people find you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. You can email me at mark@lifechangesnetwork. Imagine that, lifechangesnetwork.com. And we have a weekly show called the Life Changes Show, where we share topics like this and have these kind of conversations. And Life Changes Show is going to be a supporter of the Abundance Pub. And you can, like I say, you can email me at mark@lifechangesnetwork.com. So I'm around. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me.
Awesome.
I'm an open book.
Thank you. We appreciate you. And we're excited. This is version 1 of hundreds of thousands of conversations. I think that we can, it's like a hand, you know, we've shown you the hand, you know, there's going to be hundreds of fingers coming off, because it just happens every time we get together and we start getting into things and we start going, wow, there's like a whole new hand over here.
Yeah, we open a whole different topic.
There's a whole different topic.
Another limb.
Yeah. So we appreciate the connection we have with you, and just
absolutely,
and the friendship. We love you, bro.
Likewise, it's an honor to be here, and grateful to be a part of this great tribe. And any way I can support, I'm a friend, and it's always great to connect with you guys.
Awesome, Mark. Thanks so much, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. Super appreciate you being here, connecting. Go connect with Mark, mark@lifechangesnetwork.com. Shoot him an email. Let him know that you appreciate him taking his time and sharing with you. So we will see you next week on the Insider's Edge, and we appreciate you guys.
Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.